October 25th, 1941, near Mtsensk, east of Oral. The road is mud, not the soft kind that splashes, the kind that swallows boots and wheels whole. Rain drizzles down in gray sheets, turning the Russian steppe into a brown ocean of muck. Through the haze, a column of panzers grinds forward, their engines straining, treads choked with clay. Lieutenant Karl-Heinz Müller of the 4th Panzer Division leans out of his Panzer III's turret, goggles crusted with grime. "Verdammt," he mutters. "We'll drown in this filth before we ever see Moscow." His gunner laughs wearily. "If the Russians don't kill us first, the mud will." Then the first shot comes, a flat, thunderous crack that echoes across the valley. Müller ducks instinctively as a shell slams into the lead Panzer IV, tearing its turret clean off in a fireball. The shockwave ripples through the line. More shells follow, hissing through the air, carving geysers of dirt into the hillside. "Artillery?" someone shouts over the radio. But it isn't artillery. It's coming from the tree line ahead, the faint silhouette of something moving. Not a bunker, not a gun carriage. A tank. But not like any tank the Germans have seen before. Through the fog, it looms into view, low, angular, its turret sloped and sleek, the hull crouched like a predator. The rain slicks off its armor in perfect rivulets. A black smoke plume curls from its exhaust as it surges forward effortlessly, treads gripping the mud like claws. Müller's commander, Hauptmann Otto Brandt, lifts his field glasses. "Mein Gott," he whispers. "What is that thing?" The German 50mm gun barks. The shell ricochets, a sharp metallic ping, harmlessly deflected. The unknown tank answers with a single blast from its 76.2mm gun. The Panzer III in front of Müller disintegrates in an orange bloom. The radio erupts in panic. "Armor too thick. It's faster than us. Can't penetrate at 200 meters." The mystery tank advances undeterred, its tracks slicing through the sludge that cripples the German machines. Bullets spark off its sloped armor. When it finally halts, its gun turns with uncanny smoothness toward the retreating column. One more shot, precise, efficient, final. By dusk, the battlefield is silent again, only smoke rising over twisted steel and blackened mud. When German infantry finally approaches the wreck of the beast, they find the marking stenciled faintly on its hull. T-34. Brandt lowers his binoculars, his voice barely above a whisper. "If this is what they build in the hundreds," he says, "then we've already lost the war of machines." November 3rd, 1941, Smolensk outskirts. A pale sun hangs low over the wreckage field. Frost has settled on the shattered hulks of burned panzers, their steel carcasses groaning softly in the wind. At the center of it all sits a single captured tank, mud-caked but intact, the Soviet T-34. Around it, a small team of German engineers and officers move with quiet fascination. Among them is Dr. Hermann Ostermann, a mechanical engineer from Daimler-Benz, seconded to the Army for field analysis. He circles the tank slowly, notebook in hand, touching the steel as if it were something alive. "It's crude," says Major Franz Schulze, lighting a cigarette. "Look at the welds, uneven, rough. It's not German craftsmanship." Ostermann doesn't answer. He crouches near the track assembly, running his gloved fingers along the treads. "Crude," he finally says, "but clever." The tank's wide tracks are packed with frozen mud, and yet the suspension beneath them is still intact. The Germans' own panzers, by comparison, would have thrown a track hours ago. "This," he says, tapping the metal with his pen, "is why they can cross the steppe while our engines choke." Inside it's cramped, brutally so. The weld seams look as if they were done by torchlight, the gears and levers simple to the point of brutalism. Yet every control, every gauge, every mechanical joint has a purpose. No polish, no luxury, just function. Atop the turret, Oberleutnant Weber inspects a shell casing from the tank's 76.2-meter gun. He whistles low. Ours are 50 millimeters. Even the Panzer IV doesn't pack this kind of punch. Dr. Osterman peers through the gun sight. And look, this scope is sharp, clear, durable. It's not Zeiss, but it's good enough. And that's the danger. Schulze exhales a long stream of smoke, watching it curl against the cold air. You're telling me this thing is better than ours? Not better, Osterman replies. Simpler, easier to build, easier to repair, easier to replace. He straightens and raps his knuckles on the armor plate. The sound rings deep, solid. Sloped at 60 degrees, he mutters. A simple trick of geometry. Doubles its effective thickness. A shell strikes, it deflects. Efficiency, not extravagance. Behind them, a mechanic starts the tank's engine. The V2 diesel, its growl startlingly smooth for a vehicle that's been through battle. The sound carries across the field, a low mechanical rumble that seems to echo with inevitability. Osterman closes his notebook slowly. It's ugly, yes, he says quietly, but it's genius in its ugliness. The Russians have built a tank for war, not for parade. That night, a full report is telegraphed to Berlin. The message is terse but clear. Captured Soviet medium tank exhibits advanced armor angling, wide track mobility, and superior field durability. Production simplicity exceptional. Immediate study recommended. At the Oberkommando des Heeres, the document lands on the desk of General Heinz Guderian himself. He reads it twice, lips pressed thin. This, he says to his aide, changes everything. Outside, the first snow of the Russian winter begins to fall, covering the ruined panzers like a shroud. December 1941, Berlin, Heereswaffenamt, Army Weapons Office. The room smells of ink, pipe smoke, and cold steel. Drawings cover the walls, cross-sections of armor plating, suspension schematics, turret silhouettes traced in graphite. Around a long oak table sit Germany's finest military engineers, men from Henschel, Daimler-Benz, and Krupp, the architects of the Wehrmacht's armored might. At the head of the table, General Heinz Guderian leans forward, his gloved hands resting on the captured Soviet report. Behind him stands the silent bulk of the T-34’s turret, shipped to Berlin from Smolensk for study, the snow still clinging to its seams. This, Guderian says, rapping the steel with his knuckles, is what our panzers are up against. The clang reverberates through the room. A few of the older engineers shift uncomfortably. We underestimated them, says Dr. Osterman, who has been brought in to present his findings. The T-34 is not a copy of any Western design. It is original and revolutionary. He unrolls a series of technical drawings. Sloped armor at 60 degrees, a diesel engine with an aluminum block, lighter, cooler, more reliable than our petrol engines. Christie suspension, giving it high speed over rough terrain. And look here. He points to the simplified gearbox assembly. It can be built by unskilled labor in less than half the time of a Panzer III. A murmur runs around the room. One man, a Krupp executive with gold-rimmed glasses, scoffs. So what? It's primitive. Their factories cannot match our precision. Osterman glances up. No, Herr Director, they don't need to. They are building hundreds while we perfect one. That silences the room. Guderian exhales sharply, pacing toward the window. Outside, The snow falls thick and silent over the Tiergarten. "We built our tanks like watches," he says finally. "They built theirs like hammers." He turns back to the engineers. "So we must build a better hammer." The months that follow see German factories thrown into chaos. Proposals flood the Waffenamt, new designs inspired by the T-34, sloped armor, wide tracks, bigger guns. The VK-32M prototype, drawn up by Daimler-Benz, looks almost identical to its Soviet rival. But it's man's design, heavier, boxier, more complex, that will ultimately win approval. Its name, Panther. The irony isn't lost on Ostermann. When he sees the blueprints, he murmurs to a colleague, "We are imitating the very thing we once mocked." By the time the first Panther tanks roll off the assembly line in 1943, the lesson of the T-34 is already burned into the Reich's memory. But the cost of that lesson is catastrophic. For all their brilliance, the Germans never learn the second half of the Soviet secret: simplicity. The Panther's armor and gun are magnificent, but its gears jam in mud, its engines overheat, and its production drains the Reich's dwindling industry. In contrast, the Red Army keeps building, thousands upon thousands of T-34's, rolling off the lines at Kharkov, Stalingrad, and Nizhny Tagil. Each one rough, rugged, unstoppable. Each one a rebuke to the engineers who thought war was a contest of perfection. July 1943. Kursk, Western Russia. Dawn breaks over the steppe in a haze of dust and fire. The air thrums with the sound of engines, hundreds of them, a metallic storm building on both sides of the horizon. The largest tank battle in human history is about to begin. In a shallow command trench overlooking the rolling plains near Prokhorovka, Oberleutnant Karl-Heinz Müller, the same officer who first saw the T-34 at Mtsensk, peers through his binoculars. His Panther tank crouches behind him, its long 75mm gun trained toward the east. To his left, black plumes rise from the wrecks of Panzers already hit during the opening salvos. The radio crackles. "Panther 324 to command. Engine failure, can't move." "Panther 229, transmission jammed, overheating." Miller lowers the binoculars, jaw tight. "So much for the miracle machine," he mutters. Then, out on the horizon, the ground begins to tremble. Through the shimmering heat, shapes emerge, countless dark silhouettes, moving fast and low, their turrets glinting in the morning sun. T-34's, his gunner says quietly. Hundreds of them. The Soviet tanks fan out across the wheat fields, a tide of steel advancing without hesitation. Dust billows around them, engines roaring, tracks tearing through the earth. Overhead, IL-2 Sturmovik bombers dive low, strafing the German lines. Müller's radio erupts with orders. "All units, open fire!" The first salvo of 75mm shells rips through the air. A T-34 bursts into flame, then another. But for each one destroyed, 3 more seem to appear. The Soviets advance undeterred, firing on the move, the distinctive howl of their engines rising like a war cry. One shell slams into the side of Müller's Panther. The armor holds, barely. But the shock rattles his teeth. Warning lights flicker on his control panel. The engine temperature is spiking. "Back us up, Otto," he yells. The driver grinds the gears, but the transmission groans, seizing. The tank lurches, then stalls. Smoke fills the cabin. Outside, the T-34's close in. Their guns flash, white-hot lightning across the plain. Through the periscope, Müller sees one of them crest a ridge, its red star blazing, its turret turning with machine precision. He watches the shell leave its gun, impossibly fast, impossibly close. When he wakes, he's half buried in the mud beside his burning tank. The air stinks of diesel and cordite. Panthers and Panzers lie scattered across the field like broken toys, their elegant engineering undone by dust, heat, and Soviet ferocity. In the distance, the T-34’s roll past, silhouettes framed against a rising sun. Later, as Müller is pulled from the battlefield, he looks back one last time. The Panther, the product of Germany's pride and obsession with perfection, burns beside the simpler, sturdier machines that defeated it. He murmurs weakly, half to himself. They laughed at it once, the flying barrel of the steppes. The medic glances at him. What? Their tank, Müller says. It doesn't need polish. It just needs to live. By nightfall, the fields around Kursk are littered with the wreckage of both sides. But the Soviets hold the ground. The T-34, the machine that once stunned German scientists in disbelief, now defines the battlefield. Its silhouette will roll westward for the next 2 years, through forests, over rivers, into the ruins of Berlin itself. A symbol of what wins wars, not perfection, but endurance.